Oral questions. Questions orales. The honourable member for Sherwood Park, Saskatchewan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The job numbers are out, and they're bad. Failing Liberal policies have now caused a full-blown unemployment crisis. 7% unemployment overall. Ontario alone has shed 25,000 manufacturing jobs, and 1 in 5 students can't find a job this summer. So when will this government reverse their job-killing policies so that Canadians can get back to work?
Here.
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, we have seen the job numbers, and I would say it's in large part to the trade war that we're facing with our neighbour to the south. But Madam Speaker, Canadians, and I think I hear the Conservative will rejoice that later on today we will be tabling legislation, including a plan to build Canada strong, Madam Speaker. That's the type of thing. On this side of the House, they just ask question. On this side of the House, we put plan forward to build Canada strong.
The honourable member for Sherwood Park, Saskatchewan.
Madam Speaker, the fact is unemployment has been steadily increasing under this government for 2 years. This week I spoke to Josh, a hard-working and experienced labourer in his late 30s. Josh has been unemployed for more than a year and has now put in over 1,000 applications. StatCan's numbers show that unemployed Canadians like Josh are searching longer and becoming more desperate. Now, by raising taxes, obstructing development, and letting immigration get out of control, Liberals are depriving people like Josh of the opportunities that they deserve. Will they change course so that Josh and others can get back to work?
Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, I think about Josh, his families, his community, and all the communities around the country which are affected by this trade war. That's why, Madam Speaker, we are going to table legislation later on today with a plan, because the way to address what's going on in Josh and his employment status is to build a plan, to create opportunities, to build Canada strong, to build a confident Canada, a prosperous Canada. And I would want to salute the work of my colleague, the Minister of Transport and the Minister of One Canadian Economy. They have done great work, Madam Speaker, to build that one Canadian economy that will create.
Honourable member for Sherwood Park, Saskatchewan.
Madam Speaker, if they had a plan, the typical way you'd put a plan before the House of Commons to address unemployment is in something called a budget. And yet we have no budget. Their response to terrible unemployment numbers is to blame others, blame external events, and to fail to present the House of Commons with a budget. They said a plan beats no plan. They have no plan. They have no budget. They have no plan to address out-of-control unemployment. They need to cut taxes, allow development, and control immigration. When will they change course so that people can get back to work?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Madam Speaker, indeed, this government has a plan. This plan will be tabled later today in the form of legislation that member and his colleagues will have a chance to support. A plan to build this country, a plan to collaborate with every premier in this country who has endorsed this plan, a plan to build major projects, a plan to get our economy on track, a plan to create opportunity for Canadians from coast to coast to coast. Will that member stand up and support our plan?
The honourable member for Moose Jaw, Lake Centre, Lanigan.
Madam Speaker, today we learned that Canada's unemployment rate has risen to 7%, the highest in a decade outside the pandemic. For students, this number is even higher at over 21%. Canada's youth are eager to start their career paths but are facing obstacles at every step. They want to have independence and not be a burden to their parents. For 10 years, the Liberals have been at the helm of our economy and things have only gone downhill. The Liberals have created this unemployment crisis. Do they have a real plan to fix it?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Yeah, that's what I said. Secretary of State.
Madam Speaker, we stand with the families that are impacted by unjust, unfair, and illegal tariffs to the south of us. We stand with those businesses. But, Madam Speaker, we're a government of action. We've just advanced legislation to cut taxes for 22 million Canadians. We're lowering the carbon tax, and we're lowering the taxes on first home buyers. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Montmorency-Charlevoix. Madam Speaker, the unemployment rate among young people in Quebec is 3 times higher than the general population. It's 17% instead of 5%, and summer job offers have dropped dramatically. Our young people just want to start working and saving a bit of money. When will the government finally table a budget so that our young people can budget their futures? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Madam Speaker, my colleague will have the opportunity later today to vote in favor of legislation that contains a plan to build a strong Canada, to build national projects so that Canada has the strongest economy in the G7, to make sure that people, and young people included, can prosper and have a future. The way to build a strong Canada is to have a plan and to take action. And that's precisely what we're going to do here on this side of the House. And Canadians will watch what the Conservatives are doing. Will they support us in building a strong Canada? The honourable member. Madam Speaker, once again, just words and no budget. Our young people want to take part in the workforce. They want to help build a future, but their unemployment rate is 3 times higher than that of the general population. StatsCan shows that there are 1.6 million unemployed people, and that's a 13.8% increase over last year. When will the government turn things around and stop turning their backs on our young people who just want to build a future for themselves? The Honourable Minister. Madam Speaker, what young people want to see is what the Conservatives are going to do today, because instead of just talking, they'll have an opportunity to do something to support young people all across Canada by supporting our legislation with an ambitious plan for Canada. The Prime Minister came up with an ambitious plan. He met with all the premiers. And Canada is more united than ever before. We're making efforts for our young people to build a strong economy for our communities and for our industries. Madam Speaker, will the Conservatives support our plan? The honourable member for Côte-Nord, Kamoashishak-Nitasan. Thank you, Madam Speaker. For 3 months now, aluminum and steel have been grappling with tariffs without any help from Ottawa. This week, the tariffs doubled, and that industry is at the heart of the economy in my riding. There has to be cash flow freed up for our industry to help them. There has to be wage subsidies. After 3 months of tariff wars, what does Ottawa have to offer? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Madam Speaker. We are not abandoning those industries. We, for example, met with the steel industry leaders yesterday. We talked about the importance of cash flow for industries like aluminum in Quebec and elsewhere in Canada. The finance minister has offered support. We have made adjustments to EI even before the election to ensure that workers get enough support. We will continue to work with the industry and with workers, and we are standing up to the U.S. The honourable member for Côte-Nord, Kamoashishak-Nitasan. Let's not forget EI, Madam Speaker, and what the Liberals did with forestry and softwood lumber. We're in a trade war with the Americans, and it's not just since Trump was elected, but since his first term in 2017. Our forestry industry has been dealing with American tariffs for years now. How many layoffs will it take before Ottawa does something? The Honourable Minister. Thank you for the question, Madam Speaker. The softwood lumber industry is very important to Canada and very important to the regions of Canada. And that's one of the reasons why I would be very happy to see the support of all members in this place for our legislation around our plan to build a strong Canada. We want to build Canada We need softwood to build our future as a country, and that's why everyone here should support our legislation. The honourable member for Beauharnois, Salaberry, Soulanges, Huntingdon. Madam Speaker, while the attack by Donald Trump on our economy is getting worse, we need guaranteed access to cash flow. We need a wage subsidy to help workers so that employers can retain their workforce. All we're asking for is something a little bit sooner rather than just promises. We need proactive action, not reactive. What are they waiting for? The Honourable Government House Leader. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Like the Conservative caucus, the Bloc will have a golden opportunity very soon to support the Government of Quebec and all provincial and territorial governments all across the country, business people and unions too, and above all, people who are concerned about opportunities. When you're building a country and when you're standing up to Donald Trump and the U.S., we're going to do that by building major national projects all across this country. So the Bloc will have the opportunity later this afternoon to concretely support our plan.
Last year, 15,000 islanders relied on Loaves and Fishes, the food bank in my community, while there were 225,000 visits to food banks across BC. 1/3 of those were children. The Prime Minister promised affordable groceries. Instead, infant formula is up 9% and beef up a whopping 33% since January. Liberals keep spending, Canadians keep hurting. Will the Liberals finally table a budget that fights inflation so Canadians can afford to eat?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House.
Madam Speaker, this member who I welcome to the House was obviously not here, but perhaps she should talk to her colleagues who systematically opposed every affordability measure proposed by this government. That is childcare, that is the Canada Child Benefit, that is school nutrition programs, that is dental care, that is pharmacare. That party, the party she ran under, has systematically resisted and voted against every single affordability measure that would help the very people she claims to represent.
Honourable member for Nanaimo Ladysmith.
Madam Speaker, the Minister engages in finger-pointing while 1/3 of the people who are using food banks are children. How are parents supposed to provide healthy lunches for their kids when the cost of apples is up 19%, cheese is up 5%, oranges are up 26%? Not since 2015, but since January. 2 days of groceries cost more than $100 in my community, Madam Speaker. This Liberal government is spending $500 billion without telling Canadian parents where the revenue is coming from. Will the Prime Minister respect the will of this House and table a budget this spring?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Madam Speaker, the member asks about budgets. She should ask her colleagues in her own caucus about past budgets that have helped the very people of which she speaks, the people who are looking for school nutrition programs, who benefit monthly from the indexed Canada Child Benefit, who take their kids and drop them off at federally subsidized childcare. Madam Speaker.
Can we allow the Minister to answer a question that absolutely nobody heckled while it was being asked? The Honourable Minister has 10 seconds.
Madam Speaker, that member should ask her colleagues and maybe plea with them. Next time we bring in a measure to help Canadians get ahead, maybe they should support it.
The Honourable Member for Bow River.
Madam Speaker, I'm not sure if the Prime Minister does his own grocery shopping yet or not, so maybe that's why he still thinks food prices are just fine. Yeah, I do. Let me walk him through this. Me and my wife, 2 carts, like many dollars at Costco. Beef strip loin up 34%, white rice 14%, coffee up 9%, sweet potatoes are now a luxury. I haven't even talked about strawberries. What's his response to $500 billion in new spending with no budget, no plan? Will this government finally present a budget that feeds families instead of feeding inflation? Or is this just the price of Liberal leadership?
The Honourable Secretary of State.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we have watched the party opposite vote against every one of our initiatives that have helped families across this country from coast to coast to coast, whether it be the Canada Child Benefit, the dental program, the day care program, housing initiatives. The party opposite has not done one thing to support families across this country, so shame on them, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Bow River.
I'd like to thank the member from Edmonton West. That's supposed to be a joke. The Prime Minister doesn't buy his own groceries, so of course he doesn't notice when beef jumps 34%, infant formula climbs 9%. But I do, and so do families in Bow River who are skipping meals so their kids can eat. We don't need lectures, we don't need spin, they need relief. The policies of this past Liberal government haven't been working, this current Liberal government aren't going to work. Will the Liberals finally bring forward a budget that cuts inflation, cuts more taxes, so all Canadians can afford dinner again, or is this just the price of bad Liberal policy?
The Honourable Secretary of State.
Madam Speaker, let's look at some facts. In 2022, inflation was 8.1%. We've driven that down, per our policies, down to 1.7%. The party opposite holds themselves up as these strong economic stewards. They are not. Under their previous governments, our economy failed. We are going to aggressively rebuild our economy back by investing in Canadians. It's time for all Canadians to come together. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Yorkton Melville.
Speaker, I was amazed yesterday when the answer to the school food program rose from 400,000 to 500,000 between two 30-second questions. The Prime Minister said he wanted it to be judged by the experience of Canadians at the grocery store. So let's evaluate him. Apples up 18% since January, oranges 26%, coffee 9%, and beef a staggering 33%. Canadians are being crushed, and the Liberal response has been an additional $500 billion in new inflationary spending. When will they table their budget that reduces inflation and cuts taxes so Canadians can afford to feed their families?
Honourable Secretary of State.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, let's look at facts. The party opposite voted against the school food program. So they wouldn't support children who needed food in schools. They don't support families. They wouldn't support young mothers. They don't support Canadians that need dental work. They don't support very much that supports Canadians. It's time for all Canadians to come together. Madam Speaker, I wish the party opposite would do the same. Vote on our initiatives. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Bellechasse-les-Etchemins-Lévis. On Monday, the House called for a budget to be tabled this spring, but the Liberals are asking us to approve more than $500 billion in spending without giving us any numbers. Meanwhile, unemployment is up, mortgage payments are late, and even some full-time workers are having to go to food banks. Canadians have to budget before they spend, but apparently not this government. Can they finally tell us when they're going to table a budget, Madam Speaker? The Honourable Government House Leader. The good news, Madam Speaker, is that this member will have an opportunity to support not just one, but two parts of our plan to create opportunities and jobs for all Canadians. And that happens today. We will debate the Affordability Act, which will help 22 million Canadians with the tax cut. And later, we will table a bill supported by stakeholders in Quebec and the Quebec government to create opportunities and build major projects all across Canada. Will the members support that? The Honourable Member for Bellechasse-les-Etchemins-Lévis. The Liberals broke their word, increasing spending by 8% after promising to keep it to 2%. As a result, food inflation is out of control. Since January, beef is up 34%, apples 18%, rice 14%, and baby formula up 9%. Food banks can't keep up. Canadian families are hungry. When are the Liberals finally going to table a budget to bring down inflation and taxes? We only have a few days left. The Honourable Finance Minister. Madam Speaker, my colleague will have an opportunity to show her constituents later today once again that she does want to support affordability. Not only did we have second reading of a bill that would cut taxes that 22 million Canadians will benefit from, even in her riding, there will also be an opportunity to show all our political guts by supporting our effort to build Canada strong. People watching TV will be watching to see whether they do the right thing to support us in building a strong Canada. The Honourable Member for Pierre Boucher. Madam Speaker, $800 million. That's not the next Lotto Canada. That's the amount that the federal government has wasted on fighting our secularism bill in Quebec. The Liberals have already spent $1 million in our tax money to challenge secularism in Quebec. How much are Quebecers going to have to pay so that the federal government can fight their legislation with their own money? The Honourable Minister. Madam Speaker, that's an important question, and in my view, it's important for the federal government to take part in that case, in that litigation. The question of cost is one thing, but it's important to consider the rights of workers. It's very important to protect charter rights and to respect provincial jurisdiction at the same time. The Honourable Member for Pierre Boucher, Les Patriotes Verchères. But I'm not sure the minister really understands his role when he's attacking Quebec legislation that comes under Quebec jurisdiction. The federal government is proving by interfering in this litigation that they do not support Quebec's desire for secularism at all. They're running counter to Quebec's legislation and the National Assembly. What Quebecers want is not necessarily what Quebecers want. Why are they using Quebecers' tax money to fight this legislation? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Our government for a long time has expressed doubts about the secularism bill, not only because of what we consider abusive use of the notwithstanding clause. So we are intervening. This is a case that goes beyond Quebec's borders. And as my Bloc colleague knows full well, there are plenty of Quebecers who are very concerned about that legislation too.
Last job-killing anti-development decade, Liberals now claim they want Canada to be an energy superpower, but will only approve pipelines if there's consensus. Yet there's no consensus even in their own cabinet. Most of these ministers stopped pipelines for years. The PM's top gun said, quote, "It is essential not to increase oil production." And the PM himself says, quote, "Half of oil reserves need to stay in the ground." The PM copied Conservatives on energy after he helped block Canada's for half a decade. Isn't it true they really won't ensure private sector pipelines in all directions could get built in Canada fast at all?
The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank the Honourable Member for her question. Later today, we will be tabling new legislation to help build Canada strong, to build the projects of national interest, to make us the strongest economy in the G7. I really hope the members will support our bill.
The Honourable Member for Lakeland.
But that rhetoric and their photo ops don't matter. Actions do. And the truth is, no private sector pipelines will get built to coasts with shipping and drilling bans. Companies won't build pipelines while this government is the only one in the world to cap Canadian oil and gas and carbon taxes Canadian industries while the U.S. and others don't. They won't kill the anti-development Bill C-69 that premiers, Indigenous leaders, the private sector, and the Supreme Court oppose. Plus, they say there has to be consensus, but they alone will define what's in the national interest. Why won't they just repeal all their anti-energy laws so Canadian workers can at least—
The Honourable Government House Leader.
You know, Madam Speaker, sometimes she talks about concrete actions. Well, that member, for one rare occasion, gets to not just simply criticize, but gets to stand up Stand up for workers. Stand up for the government of Alberta. Stand up for all of the premiers and all of the territories in this country. Stand up for workers, unions, for businesses, for people who want to build this country, who want to create opportunity in this country to do major projects and build Canada strong. Will that member stand up and do something for once?
The honourable member for Terranova, the Peninsulas.
Mr. Speaker, during this last Liberal decade, North Atlantic Refining stripped their investment in our local refinery, causing major instability in our area. On Wednesday, my honourable Liberal colleague from Newfoundland announced with pride that they are now investing once again, but not here, but in France. This does not seem like something a proud Newfoundlander would announce. My question is, did this Liberal leadership force my fellow Newfoundlander to spin this shameful news?
Hear, hear.
The honourable minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think it's really important for the member opposite, and I welcome him to the House, but I think it's really important to remember that there is a bill that will be tabled later today that's about growing this country. And I am so proud of the work that this new government is doing to ensure that Canada meets this moment. That includes Canada becoming a world superpower. And I truly hope that the member opposite is going to be there to vote for all Newfoundland and Labradorians and all Canadians.
The honourable member for Terranova, the Peninsulas.
Madam Speaker, they're good at promises, but not production. In fact, they'll cap it. This refinery used to produce 100% of our island's diesel, propane, jet fuel, and gasoline. Then, this Liberal government wasted $89 million to a conversion for only biodiesel. And now we have to ship in all these other fuels, and everyone is paying the price. Mr. Speaker, does this government realize that their political headline is now costing Newfoundlanders an extra 5 cents a litre to import fuels that used to be made on our rock?
The honourable minister.
Madam Speaker, on Monday we met with the premiers, including the Premier of Newfoundland, to talk about how we will build Canada strong. We had consensus with all of the different premiers. We are tabling, just 5 days later, we are tabling legislation to start building again. We really hope the members will support this new legislation.
The honourable member for Peace River Westlock.
Mr. Speaker, after the Liberals' Bill C-69 cancelled a dozen pipeline projects in Canada, Germany, Japan, Greece, Poland, Latvia, Ukraine, South Korea, the Philippines, and Taiwan have all pleaded with Canada for our LNG. Now, in the middle of a jobs crisis, the promise of an energy superpower, and the world wanting our energy, we could use Canadian steel and Canadian labor to build Canadian pipelines to get Canadian energy to the world. So how many new pipelines? How many new pipelines can we expect operational in the next 2 years?
The honourable government House Leader.
Madam Speaker, that member, just like all of his colleagues, are going to have a golden opportunity. Presented later today, there will be a bill with a plan to build this country with the men and the women and the wood and the steel and the aluminum, with companies, with unions, with workers, men and women from right across this country to build the economy of tomorrow. That member will have a golden opportunity to support this government's plan. Will he do it?
The honourable member for Cole-Elmer.
Madame la Présidente,
Madam Speaker, Canadian businesses and workers are coming together to build a clean and competitive economy. But currently, our biggest trade partner is threatening new tariffs. So it is essential that we diversify our trade with other countries.
Environment and climate change tell us how Canada's industrial carbon pricing system supports clean growth and helps protect Canada's economic sovereignty. Good question.
The honourable minister.
Sovereignty tax.
Je remercie le... I'd like to thank the member for Hull Elmer for his question. The industrial carbon tax is important in order to build a strong Canadian economy.
Canada is seeking to diversify our trade, and in that we are looking at countries around the world adopting border carbon adjustments. Making sure that we have a strong industrial carbon price is a part of the solution to making sure we have access to those markets. Beyond that, it protects our planet, it protects Canadian jobs, unlike the Conservatives who don't care about this and are actually seeking to avoid it.
The honourable member for Langley Township, Fraser Heights.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Canadian dream is to own a home, but that dream has been shattered for so many young families. And those who own a home are now facing higher mortgage payments due to higher interest rates caused by 10 years of Liberal government mismanagement of the economy. According to a recent CMHC report, 63% of Canadian homeowners are worried about defaulting on their mortgages, and 17% have actually missed mortgage payments. So my question to the Minister of Housing, will he acknowledge that this Liberal government has totally mismanaged the housing file?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This new government is focused on rolling out the most ambitious affordable housing plan that Canada has ever seen. And we expect the members opposite to support this. They've raised many questions on this issue. Clearly, they are keen to support our initiatives to scale up affordable housing across Canada with the Build Canada Homes initiative. We look forward to that support. It's time to build.
The Honourable Member for Beauce. Madam Speaker, the housing crisis is getting worse throughout the country. Rents have skyrocketed over the last 10 years of this Liberal government. Federal programs for housing are too slow, too expensive, too complicated, and too inflationary. This government's measures are just not enough. Young people in Beauce deserve to be able to buy their own home. I have a simple question. When will this government bring forward a budget? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to start by congratulating my colleague on his election. But I would say that over the last 10 years, his party voted against all of our affordability measures, such as dental care, child care, the child benefit, and other things. Right now, they're off on the right foot by helping us with a tax cut for 22 million Canadians, and also by helping us eliminate GST on new home builds for new home buyers, which will help people access the dream of buying a home. And I hope that they will keep supporting us and help us keep supporting programs that will help us constituents.
King Vaughan.
Madam Speaker, according to the Liberals' own housing agency, 60% of Canadians are struggling to pay down debt, and 1 in 4 are using one credit card just to pay off another. The cost of living up 45%, job losses up 34%, and interest rates climbing 29%. The dream of home ownership is slipping further out of reach. Canadians are stuck living in their parents' basement. So I ask, what is this Liberal government's plan to restore the hope Canadians once had? When will they table a budget so people can plan for the future?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As I've said numerous times in this House, there is a real focus on this side of the House in ensuring that young Canadians have an opportunity for home ownership. That's why we brought in the GST break for first-time home buyers, $50,000 for homes up to $1 million, and a GST break up to $1.5 million in the markets that are higher priced. So we are delivering a break for first-time home buyers. We're also focused on scaling up Build Canada Homes, which will build homes that are needed at the prices that are affordable for young people across Canada in these years ahead.
For King Vaughan.
The Liberals promised 500,000 new home starts a year, but according to TD's own report, the target is completely unrealistic. Even under the most generous projections, their plan falls dramatically short of what's needed, and now construction is falling, not rising. So let's be honest, a GST cut on homes under $1 million does nothing if there are no homes being built. When will this Liberal government stop spinning their talking points and provide a real plan for Canadians, or maybe they just don't have one?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, I will urge the member opposite to check the facts. Year to year, housing starts are up across Canada. We are building more than ever before. We need to scale that to the next level, though, and that's why this government ran on a commitment to build up to 500,000 homes a year across Canada In 10 years, we have to scale up to that level, and that means cranking up a whole new industry on modular and off-site construction. We have to build faster, cheaper, and greener across Canada to deliver the homes that Canadians need. That's what we're committed to.
The honourable member for Parkland.
Madam Speaker, as wildfires force tens of thousands to evacuate their homes, criminals are taking advantage of the situation to loot homes and businesses and steal emergency equipment needed to fight the flames. In Redwater, a man was arrested for tampering with sprinkler equipment during the fire, and in Yellowhead County, emergency equipment was stolen. The RCMP is saying that this is the work of repeat offenders, and this is happening across the country. When will these Liberals finally get serious about protecting our communities and crack down on these thugs?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Secretary of State.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This new government is taking community safety very seriously. We have committed ourselves to bail reform for repeat violent offenders, for those that are involved in home invasions, auto theft, human smuggling, drug trafficking. But let me be clear, Madam Speaker, the provinces and territories also have a critical role to play. I'm glad to see that the province of Ontario has taken some steps. We welcome Premier Ford's announcement to strengthen Ontario's bail system. I hope that other provinces also follow suit.
The honourable member for Parkland.
Madam Government, this Liberal government's record is a clear failure. I spoke with an RCMP officer in Drayton Valley who told me that he had arrested a meth dealer only to see them back out on the street 4 hours later. The Liberals' catch and release bail policies have endangered our communities as drug dealers and violent criminals are released back out onto our streets in record time. There is something seriously wrong in our country when a criminal can be arrested, processed, and back out on the streets faster than a sick Canadian can see a doctor in an emergency room. Do the Liberals recognize that their catch and release bail policies have made our communities far more dangerous?
The Honourable Secretary of State.
Madam Speaker, I've said before, we are committed to making it tougher for violent criminals to get bail, and we're going to impose stricter sentences for repeat violent offenders. The provinces, too, have a role to play. We've had these discussions with provinces. Some provinces have been stepping forward. We look forward to working with our provinces and territories to make sure that Canadians are safe. We will stop at nothing to protect Canadians.
The honourable member for York Durham.
Liberal experiments in leniency have led to lawlessness on our streets. Ontario court data shows that major assaults have increased 70% since 2015, from 13,000 cases to over 23,000 cases, Madam Speaker. That is not just a failure of so-called social justice policy, it is a failure of moral responsibility by this government. Will the Prime Minister put victims ahead of violent offenders and cancel his get-out-of-jail-free laws, Bill C-5 and C-75?
The Honourable Secretary of State.
Once again, Madam Speaker, we are going to bring forward bail legislation in the coming months. We're working hard to make sure that feedback is being taken from all our policing agencies. We're going to do whatever it takes to protect Canadians. We're working hard to make sure we strengthen this regime, but provinces too have a role to play in the administration of justice.
The honourable member for York Durham.
10 years, Madam Speaker, no bail reform. Why? Because they think everything is okay. In Durham, they don't. In 2015, there were 68 cases of sexual assault. Last year, 128 cases. At the same time, offenders violating bail and other conditions were up 137%. That is not mere coincidence, that is cause and effect. Will the minister please break this cycle of violence and repeal their get-out-of-jail-free laws, Bill C-5 and C-75?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada.
Madam Speaker, the honourable member is right to raise concern around crimes involving sexual violence, but his solution is to repeal a law that makes it tougher for people who've committed acts of intimate partner violence to actually escape bail and return to our communities. That is a nonsensical approach. In the months ahead, we are going to be moving forward with legislative reforms that are going to make it harder to get bail for people who commit violent acts, for people who are engaged in auto theft, home invasion, human trafficking, and tougher sentences for violent repeat offenders. We need to be smart, we need to look at the facts, and we need to make sure that we understand the laws that we're putting forward, or in his case, suggest we would take off the books.
The honourable member for Elgin, St. Thomas, London South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Last night, the Minister of Public Safety made some shocking admissions. He's the minister responsible for confiscating law-abiding firearms owners' guns. He doesn't know what the firearms safety course is. He doesn't even know what a firearms license is, Madam Speaker. I invite him to come out to my local range, the East Elgin Sportsman Association, and learn the things he needs to know to do his file. But since the minister doesn't even know the basics of Canada's gun laws, will he halt this government's confiscation of firearms?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Madam Speaker, let me first congratulate my colleague opposite for his Adobe editing skills for the type of trash that he's putting out on social media. But let me just address the issue of buyback. A serious plan to keep our communities safe starts with responsible action to keep guns off our streets, Madam Speaker. The buyback program will provide fair compensation to businesses and firearm owners in possession of prohibited firearms that are otherwise unusable or unsellable. The first phase allows gun stores and gun dealers now holding over 10,000 guns that are now illegal in the
Honourable Member for Winnipeg South Centre.
Madam Speaker, over the course of the past few weeks, we've watched as devastating wildfires have ravaged through my home province of Manitoba and the neighbouring province of Saskatchewan. Entire communities have been evacuated, homes have been lost, and the air quality has been so poor that everyday activities have been rendered very difficult. Unsurprisingly, in places like Winnipeg, my hometown, the community has responded with kindness and generosity. Can the Minister of Emergency Management and Community Resilience share with this House how other Canadians can step up in this moment of need? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, I want to thank my colleague for his question and for his deep concern for the people of Manitoba and Saskatchewan. The wildfire season has hit earlier and harder than usual, and Canadians are stepping up to support those affected. That's why we've partnered with Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and the Red Cross to match every single individual donation made to their wildlife appeals. Every dollar Canadians give will go further to provide shelter, food, and essential supplies to those affected by wildfires. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for St. John St. Croix.
Madam Speaker, yesterday I asked the government why a convicted child sex offender in New Brunswick is out on bail while appealing his jail sentence. The government blamed the provinces, judges, and the police. Yet this child sex offender was already arrested and sentenced for his crime. The predator got out on bail under federal law, and the government is not closing this dangerous loophole. Now, the minister pointed to C2 as an answer, but this bill does nothing to stop this from happening again. So I ask again, when will Liberals stop convicted child sex offenders from receiving bail?
The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, I understand this matter involves the Correctional Services Canada and it's subject to the release by the parole board. Of course, C2 has a number of important measures in place to protect the border, including ensuring that those who are predators, especially on the internet, using child pornography, for example, the law enforcement has the right tools in order to be able to do their jobs more adequately, Madam Speaker.
Member for Central Newfoundland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This year's Northern Cod assessment places the stock just a fraction below the healthy zone. With all those seeking increased quota, one sector stands out in terms of their historical access and adjacency to the resource. Those are the inshore harvesters of the northeast coast of Newfoundland in areas 3K and 3L. So given that these harvesters have had little increase in their share of quota last year, will the minister do the right thing and accept the FFAW proposal to allocate any increase in Northern Cod quota to the inshore fishers of the northeast coast?
Hear, hear, hear. The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I well know the historic importance of cod to the province as well as the cultural importance. And I also remember the moratorium 30 years ago and well remember their the absolute devastation to so many communities and individuals. As we begin to move forward and see the stock return to a more healthy zone, it is imperative that we ensure that we balance the future generations of fishers in the province with the need for harvesters to be able to have a reasonable livelihood, and I will look at both.
The honourable member for Central Newfoundland.
Madam Speaker, inshore operators along the northeast coast are seeing heavy predation on their crab stocks by cod. This has impacted their crab quotas and will worsen as the cod stock grows. Plant workers and fish harvesters in this adjacent area must benefit from the growth of the cod stock that's placing livelihoods now dependent on crab in peril. So will the minister not yield to high-paid lobbyists and foreign-funded NGOs and instead do the right thing and accept the FFAW proposal to allocate any increase in northern cod to fish harvesters on the inshore sector of the northeast coast?
The honourable minister.
And I will repeat again what I said earlier, because I don't know if my colleague heard me. It is imperative that we balance the future of stocks. We need to have a fishery to pass on to the next generation. At the same time, we need to understand that this is livelihood, and we can do both, but we also need to ensure that we have a stock going forward. Thank you.
The honourable member for Carleton.
Madam Speaker, sport brings people together, builds confidence, and helps young people stay healthy and active. That's why programs like the Community Sport for All initiative are so important, especially for kids who might otherwise face barriers to participating. Could the Secretary of State for Sport update the House on how this program is helping making sport more accessible for Canadians?
The Honourable Secretary of State.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank my neighbours in Burlington North, Milton West for their confidence, but I'd also like to sincerely thank the good people of Carleton for electing that member, a fantastic community champion, as their member of Parliament. The Community Sport for All initiative lifts people up by breaking down barriers to physical activity. Programs like Dribble Dreams in Milton and Ottawa South, United Soccer in that member's riding, an organization that MP knows well because he's so connected to his community. Partners like Kids Sport and Jumpstart have already helped more than 1 million Canadian families and kids enjoy sport and participate. That's because every kid deserves a chance to play, to compete, and belong. When kids play, Madam Speaker, Canada wins.
The honourable member for l'honorable député.
The honourable member for Richmond North Basca. Thank you, Madam Speaker. After 10 years of these liberal inflationary deficits, we now see the result. Yesterday, I heard a heart-rending story from someone from Victoriaville. She said, I live alone. It's very hard to make ends meet. At the end of the month, it's very hard to pay the bills. I can barely put food on the table after paying my bills. Sometimes I can't put food on the table at all. She said she is able to eat only if she has money left over. Here in Canada, it was heartbreaking. My question is simple. Will the Liberals finally table a budget so that no one actually has to give up some of their meals? The Honourable Government House Leader. Madam Speaker, I'd like to welcome our new colleague to the House. He's lucky because he will have the opportunity today to support a piece of legislation that will lower taxes. For example, for the constituent in Victoriaville that he mentioned. He will also have an opportunity to support a bill that was also supported by his former boss, Mr. Legault. This bill will create big projects, economic activity opportunities for workers, including for people like his constituent.
Trump's tariffs are just the latest blow for BC's forestry sector. The industry needs a lifeline so it can provide good jobs in rural communities. Retrofitting mills to generate electricity from biomass could protect jobs and power grids with sustainable energy. The Domtar paper mill in Port Alberni made this switch, and now 88% of its emissions come from biomass. In 2023, the Liberals promised a tax credit for biomass energy, but have delayed implementation while investments head south. Will the Prime Minister show he hasn't forgotten about BC's forestry sector and make sure biomass is in this year's budget?
Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, thank you for the member's question. Our government supports the growth of the biomass sector. Later today, we'll be tabling a bill that will help us build new energy-efficient sources of energy, including biomass, and we hope our member will support the bill.
The honourable member for Nunavut.
Nunavut has the highest rate of child poverty in Canada. Almost half of Inuit children go to school hungry every day at 42%. Yet, the Liberals recently cancelled a Hamlet food voucher program with nothing to replace it. The Nutrition North subsidy does not reduce grocery prices. Meanwhile, the Northwest Company consistently reports hundreds of millions in profits. Will the Liberals admit they believe the so-called nation-building Grace Bay Road is more important than feeding Inuit children?
Yes. The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are committed to ensuring full retail subsidy benefits reach Northerners. To enhance accountability, we formed Nutrition North Compliance Audit Review Committee with Indigenous and regional representatives. We recognize food is more than nutrition. It is also cultural identity and sovereignty, and we are committed to ensuring that the subsidy goes directly to Northerners. Thank you.
And that comes to the end of oral questions. Just a reminder for members to please look at the chair and see if it's a woman or a man who's sitting in the chair. It would be much appreciated. Thank you.